Well, ladies and gentlemen, it's fantastic to be back in America. But I'm sad to report that Britain is in the dark age. We have a socialist government, commissars ruling over us, who are leading our country in a terrible direction.
Hello, fellow Britons, and welcome back to our little corner of the political circus, where the tea is hot, the commentary is even hotter, and the clowns in Westminster are always on parade. Today we're diving into a storm of controversy sparked by none other than Liz Truss, who recently took to CPAC to deliver a speech that could rattle even the stiffest of upper lips. So pour yourself a cuppa, settle in, and let's have a chin wag about the state of our great nation.
The current establishment stooges in Whitehall and Westminster are only the latest iteration of Britain going wrong for the past few decades. Because let's be honest, Britain isn't working. The British system is deeply rotten. Britain is becoming a failed state. We've got people who are being arrested and locked up for posting on X and Facebook.
Now, if you happened to miss it while you were busy admiring your garden gnomes, let me fill you in. Liz Truss, never one to shy away from a bit of drama, graced the stage at CPAC and launched into a tirade against what she terms an anti-West ideology pervading our government, institutions, and even big-name corporations. According to Truss, this insidious influence is corroding the very bedrock of British greatness.
And yet many of those perpetrators have not been brought to justice. In fact, those crimes have been covered up, and we know that the authorities colluded. We know there was police collusion, and we know there was collusion from the local council. We have a massive problem with illegal immigration, but yet we can't even deport people who are criminals from our country because of human rights.
She highlighted failures across immigration, energy, and justice, all areas where this so-called anti-West ideology has, according to her, wreaked havoc. It was a speech that was as much a warning as it was a call to arms. And let's be honest, folks, when the very pillars that made Britain the envy of the world begin to wobble like a dodgy, wobbly table at a Sunday roast, it's time to ask, what on earth are we doing?
We have an economic orthodoxy, a Bank of England that has printed vast amounts of money. They've created rampant inflation. They've wasted billions of taxpayer pounds. If they weren't the government, it would be called a heist.
Now, while Liz Truss was busy playing the role of the no-nonsense patriot, the Labour Party and its ringmaster, Keir Starmer, were busy performing somewhere else. Starmer, in particular, has developed quite the reputation for pulling money out of thin air when it comes to keeping the war machine chugging along.
I announced the biggest sustained increase in defence spending since the Cold War. That's also why I met President Trump last week. I announced the biggest sustained Yesterday evening, the UK signed a £2.2 billion loan to provide more military aid to Ukraine, backed not by the British taxpayer, but by the profits from frozen Russian assets. And today I'm announcing a new deal, which allows Ukraine to use £1.6 billion of UK export finance to buy more than 5,000 air defence missiles.
The very same man who seems to find it easier to conjure funds for endless military adventures can't seem to spare a quid for heating our homes. It's as if Starmer's magical money-making trick only works for the things that keep the war machine alive while leaving the people out in the cold.
Nigel Farage.
Thank you. It may be a great irony that a Remainer Prime Minister used Brexit freedoms as effectively as he did yesterday. Indeed, as Number 10 briefed. We are now in a unique position compared to the rest of Europe, and yesterday was a triumph. I also applaud him making such positive words about President Trump and our relationship with America, even if nobody behind him agrees. But here's the key. President Zelensky has now accepted that he's going to sign the minerals agreement with America. And America's going to put in $100 billion or whatever it is, and thousands of Americans will be in Ukraine. Is that of itself enough of a security guarantee? No. Or does it mean that we need to send British troops? And if we do, given the size of our army, how many?
Truss's message was clear. The values that once made Britain and the West successful, the values of accountability, transparency and free speech, are under threat. And if we don't act now, we might just find ourselves in a future where our voices are muzzled, our rights trampled, and our heritage trampled under the weight of ideologies that care little for the very principles that built our nation.
And we're in a situation where Britain is almost bankrupt, morally, socially, and economically. And I think people in this room might want to know, how on earth has this happened? This is the country that invented parliamentary democracy. It's the country of the Magna Carta. It's the country of the Bill of Rights. We protected freedom of the press back in 1695, almost 100 years before the First Amendment. How on earth can the country of Adam Smith and the Industrial Revolution be deindustrializing? It doesn't make any sense.
She urged for a revival of the principles that once made Britain the beacon of the West, principles that included robust free speech, genuine accountability, and the dismantling of shadowy networks that operate behind closed doors. So, where does all this leave us?
And the answer is that everything that made Britain great is being destroyed by an establishment that hates Britain and hates the West. Like in most of Europe, our universities, our institutions, and our corporations have been taken over by anti-West ideology.
On the one hand, we have Liz Truss, a fiery critic of the anti-West ideology that, in her view, is poisoning every aspect of our society. On the other hand, we have a Labour Party led by a man who seems to be lost. The establishment, it appears, has become so enamoured with its own self-importance that it's forgotten the very values that built this great nation. Truss's message is as clear as a fog-free day in Cornwall. If we continue down this path, we risk undoing centuries of progress and tradition, trading our storied past for a future defined by tyranny, incompetence, and, let's face it, a lot of clownish antics.
Patriotic Brits have had enough. They've had enough. And we look across the Atlantic with envy. We see President Trump in the Oval Office signing off executive orders, and we want some of that in Britain.
Do we want a nation where leaders are more interested in keeping the wheels of war turning than in warming the hearts and homes of the vulnerable? Or do we crave a return to a time when our values, accountability, transparency, free speech, were non-negotiable?
We want a Trump revolution in Britain.
So, my dear viewers, as you mull over these stirring ideas, ask yourselves, do you support the current course that seems destined to plunge us further into the twilight of incompetence? Or do you believe it's high time we turned the tide, dismantled the deep state, and restored the values that once made Britain the envy of the world? Feel free to share your thoughts in the comments below. After all, a bit of healthy debate never hurt anyone.
I believe that we can make Britain great again. I believe that we can make Europe great again. And I believe that together we can make the West great again. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you for joining me, and do give us a like, subscribe and tap that little bell for more no-holds-barred commentary. Until next time, keep your tea hot, your humour sharper and your wits about you. Cheerio, and see you in the next video.